All right, guys, welcome to another edition of Seahawks Forever. Doing this one live tonight, so you can throw your questions and comments at me, and we can just talk about practice. We are just 2 days away now from the Seahawks kicking off their preseason campaign against a whole bunch of familiar faces. Pete, Gino, Jamal, coming into town on Thursday at Lumen Field to play some actual football. Who's going to play? Who's not going to play? Some injury updates. What did I see out on the field today? Who stood out? All that and more. And your questions coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Before we get started, let's do what we always do. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you want to support me and or the show, as I am a full-time independent content creator, all the different ways you can do that are linked down below. But I specifically want to check out or remind you of my Substack. This is new. If you prefer the written word, I'm having a lot of fun writing again, knocking the dust off, and starting to post more consistently there. And I have made a vow. So just to remind you here, that Substack will be completely free all throughout the preseason. So check that out if you would. I got a chance to get out to the VMAC today and watch the Seahawks practicing. It was a lot of fun. Great day today. Not sure about tomorrow. It's supposed to rain a little bit, although I don't think Thursday is in jeopardy. I thought it was really good energy out there today. And I'll just say this before we get into some of the specific stuff. I have just really been impressed with the energy, the feel of these practices. It feels tight. It feels really tight and intentional. Not that Pete Carroll's practices weren't. It's just, he was known for creating kind of a loose atmosphere and environment in the practice sessions. And these really do feel different. It feels like, even though they're having a good time out there, feels like they're there to work and get stuff done. Really impressed with the efficiency with which they go about their business. And watching these coaches coach has really been a lot of fun. There's things that I pick up, that I hear, that I see, that I can't relay to you. But it's just one of the things I really enjoy about being up close. You just see things a little bit differently. And then being out there on a consistent basis, something that I really value. This was their 12th practice, if you include Football Fest. I've been in attendance for 8 of them, and I've never done that before. I've never gone to more than 2 public practices in any given training camp, in addition to the preseason games. And so it just gives you more of an ongoing, you're just in touch with the storylines, with the story arcs, with players' journeys, the kind of the yin and the yang of it. I'll give you an example. Let's talk about that wide receiver group a little bit. Let's talk about specifically Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So as recently as a week ago, when, somebody here or on Twitter or whatever, and there's certainly been several instances of this, it's been suggested to me that, hey, maybe we don't need him on the roster because Torrey Horton's healthy and productive, out there doing it every day, looking like a guy who has really shrunk the learning curve that typically faces college wide receivers making the transition to the pros, a specific position that John Schneider used to say took 2 to 3 years for those guys to really understand and be comfortable in the pro game. But just the feeling I got being out at practice, watching MVS work, and then watching how the coaches were utilizing him, it just felt like he had a lock on that 3rd or 4th receiver position, that his veteran presence and his experience in this scheme, playing the second half of the season last year for New Orleans, for Clint Kubiak there, was going to be valuable. But as camp has worn on, it isn't anything Valdes-Scantling has done wrong or hasn't done, because he looks like a polished, experienced veteran receiver who's still got some deep speed, catches the ball well. I know early in his career that was an issue, but from the reps I've seen, again, over 8 practices now, real reliable catcher. Some players are allowed to improve, and he has gotten better at that, I think, over the course of time. It's not so much anything he hasn't done or is doing wrong. It's what other players have done. It's Horton, sure. It's Jake Bobo, and my opinion of his profile and his fit on this team really changed a week ago when Mike Macdonald used words like integral and identity relative to Jake Bobo and what he means to this team and just what a fit he is in this offense. And then it's the young guys. Cody White has just been making plays every day. Mike Macdonald keeps bringing up his name. And the most recent one is Derek Young. And this is one that I'm really happy about because as I was standing there early in practice today, just kind of watching them go about their warm-ups, they've got their exercise bands around their knees. They're doing all that stuff. Derek Young's a specimen, man. I don't even know if it shows up properly on television. Like, you got to see him up close and standing next to other players. The way he's built, like, you root for him. You just want him on the team. You want him to be a player. And now he's making plays. 6 straight practices now with a touchdown catch. Had a spectacular one-handed touchdown today. A couple other plays. And we've seen the versatility. We've seen him. He was out there Saturday at Football Fest as with George Halani as the 2 kickoff returners. We'll see what they do on Thursday, but that's something that he does. And he plays on all the teams as well that Valdez-Scantling doesn't give you. Now, there's a question of how many receivers they're going to keep, right? 5 or 6. But I still think, and it comes down to this, potentially. And I talk about this a lot on the show. It's not necessarily keeping the best 53 players. But sometimes those decisions at the back end of the roster have more to do with how you project the demand for that player around the league. Can you get him through waivers to the practice squad? Now, ever since they've stopped with the progressive cuts throughout the camp, they just have the one at the end. Teams, for the most part, don't do a lot of work on the waiver wire. It's about 20% of players that are waived get claimed. And it's about 1,300 players league-wide. It's really another wave of free agency. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has bounced around the league. He's been with 6, 7 teams. He's a veteran. He's 30 years old now. He's not a guy that I think teams are going to be crawling over the top of each other to sign, which provides the Seahawks the opportunity to release him, and if he gets through waivers, to either sign him to the practice squad, one of the veteran exceptions, or you can wait until after week 1 and bring him back, and that does impact the contract and how much is guaranteed. That might not apply as much to Valdez-Scantling because if they cut him tomorrow, there's about $3 million in dead money there because of the way the contract was structured. They'd free up about $1 million in cap space, I think is how that works. But there would be some dead money incurred. But the impact of that would be lessened, obviously, if you brought him back after cuts. Whereas if you release a Derek Young, he might get picked up by a team that sees the youth and the upside, the kick return ability, the special teams contributions. That might be a tricky one. That might work in Young's favor as far as making this roster. Cody White's a little different story because he's another guy that's kind of bounced from practice squad to practice squad. And I say this all the time, but sometimes the league tells us how they feel about a player. And if you're consistently that available, then sometimes that's an indicator of how much demand there is or isn't out there for you. A week and a half ago, I did a new 53-man roster projection after what I saw the first week of camp. I had Steven Sims on it. He's been banged up, a little bit of a hamstring issue. He's day-to-day, but just him being away just kind of puts a stamp of approval on the rest of that receiver group. Like, I don't think you're missing anything without Steven Sims, especially if the team as they appear to be, is leaning towards Torrey Horton being your primary punt returner. And then you can get by on kick returns with Helani, Young, potentially others. So, the story changes as camp goes along. And there's only so much you can glean by watching guys like me talk about it. Being out there is really, really valuable. I did get an opportunity today. I just thought I would play one clip here. I got a chance to ask Mike Macdonald a question. He was back today, obviously. Missed yesterday for a personal reason. He didn't get into details today. He just said it was a family thing, but all is good. Big thumbs up. His wife and kid were out there, and he was rocking Jack in the stroller after practice. So maybe it was part of his extended family, whatever. But he said, "Hey, everything's good." In fact, he had a great quote. He said, "A lot of people have big problems out there. My problems aren't big." But I had a chance to ask him a question. Thought I'd play that clip for you here. You might not be able to hear me at the beginning. What I asked him is, because I was curious about this, Bryce Coots, who was sitting next to me Saturday during Football Fest, noticed that it appeared that Adam Dirty was calling some defensive plays at times during that practice. And then Macdonald being away yesterday, so Dirty got to control the defense all the way through practice. So I asked him, is there a plan in place to give Dirty some of those responsibilities, maybe even in game action? We've seen some of that, like Sean McVay is a good example. He sometimes in the preseason allows his offensive coordinators to call a game in the preseason. It's a really valuable experience, really helps develop that guy in the event that someday Mike Macdonald may want to give up play calling duties, or at least certainly to help Dirty's profile for when he starts getting calls to potentially be a defensive coordinator with another team and given play calling duties. Here is, let me find that. Where is it? There it is. Here's what he had to say about that. Coach Adam got a chance to call things yesterday with you away. Do you have a plan in place for him to get those opportunities?
So I didn't show up for a game? No, AD and I, we've been splitting play calling duties really for, since we walked in the door. In terms of practice and how we call periods, sometimes I'll be working operations. Sometimes it's a good period. AD's just happens to be calling that period. And it's not like a tried and true written formula of how we're going to get ready to go, but I've a pretty good idea or process of what it's going to take to get ready to call the first game. But it's important for us to be on the same page and start to think alike. And he has some wrinkles that how he likes to call it, which is opportunities for me to learn and grow. And then in these true call up periods where it's kind of live situations like we did there at the end, it's fun to go back and through what was his mind or what was on my mind, and that's the way we can sharpen each other and just become better play callers. So he's a fun guy to work with.
Thought that was a cool answer. Intriguing, though. It sure doesn't sound like he's close at all to letting go of play calling duties, and I wouldn't expect that he would be going into his second year, specifically because this defense is there, right? They went through the growing pains of the first half of last year, some of the tweaks to the roster. We saw what they could be the second half of the year. But then you've also heard from Macdonald this offseason talking about how excited he is to really be able to dive into the playbook and open the whole playbook for his defense because of that continuity, because of that chemistry. 15 players that started at least a game last year, 13 players that played over 300 snaps, I believe. That's the stat. That's going to allow him to do more things that already is. We're seeing it in practice. We're seeing him throw his whole bag at Clint Kubiak and that Seahawks offense, trying to get them up to speed and not taking it easy on them, really throwing everything he can at Sam Darnold to help prepare him for the regular season. Before I get to some of your questions and comments, I go over a couple of things. We got some injury updates today. Christian Haynes was back. And it looked like he was going 100% full speed, but he was playing, he was working at left guard almost exclusively today. Didn't see him at center. We'll get to the center position in a moment. And didn't see him at right guard. At right guard, it was Anthony Bradford again. He's pretty much been the starter there, running with the ones unquestioned since last Thursday, which is when Haynes first got nicked up. It was a left pec injury that kind of limited Haynes. And then Satawa Lamea is the guy running at right guard number 2. And so, it begs the question, even though it was injury related, the reason that we saw Haynes not playing on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, essentially. And now he comes back and they've got him in a different role. So that tells me that, he still may yet have an opportunity to compete for that right guard spot. But maybe by missing those 3 days, it gave other guys a chance. Other guys play well. The coaches go watch the tape after Football Fest on Saturday. And maybe they felt just, similarly to how they did last year when Bradford got hurt, that Lamea is farther ahead. Now, I did watch Satawa Lamea quite a bit today. And he looks like he's taking a real step forward as far as his technique, his footwork, his hand placement. I've always just liked what a natural mover he is. I thought he had a good day today. That means that Jalen Sundell was playing with the ones today at center because Oluwatimi still was not practicing as well. Now, he was out there and he had a jersey on, but he wasn't practicing. Mike Macdonald did tell us after the game it's a little bit of a back issue. He doesn't think it's serious. Day-to-day, we might see Oluwatimi back out there tomorrow. But because all throughout camp so far he has been pretty much the unquestioned starter at center, don't expect that we'll see him on Thursday. Macdonald did clarify what we might see on Thursday as far as playing time. Get to that in a second. Some of the other injury updates, though, Tyrese Knight's got a little bit of a knee thing, which he was walking around out there looking okay. We didn't see any significant injury event happen over the last couple of days, but Macdonald did use the word imaging. They are going to have that knee scanned and checked out just to make sure everything's okay. But again, we've got some time to work with here because I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Tyrese Knight on Thursday anyway. Steven Sims still out with a hamstring injury, a couple other players as well. Mike Morris wasn't out there today. Again, doesn't sound serious, just something they want to check out and take care of him. But no other severe injuries over the last couple of days. So Mike was asked specifically what he considers a starter, what he defines as a starter, because he had previously said a couple of days ago that the starters were not going to play on Thursday. He did clarify that some of the young guys that need reps, need that development time, are going to play. Specifically the top picks. He said, you're going to see Gray Zabel. You're going to see Nick Emenwar. You're going to see Elijah Arroyo. I think we're going to see plenty of Robbie Oots and Torrey Horton. We'll see the young offensive lineman. I think we're going to see all of the draft picks. And the one that he sounded the most excited to watch was Jalen Milroe. So it'll be interesting to see how much they let him do. They're not going to show us the any of the stuff that they really are excited about. They're not going to show us anything that translates to what he might be doing as a rookie in short yardage packages, for example. But anytime Jalen Milroe's playing in a live game situation, you get excited to see what he can do. And even more so this time, because I think in addition to the fact that now he can take off and run, because it's not two-hand touch, it's not half speed, it's not a walkthrough, it's not, they're not blowing it dead the second somebody touches him like they are in practice. He can go. But also because of the progression we've seen from him as a passer. Thought he had another good day today. And for the thing that really stood out to me today early in practice for him was just the confidence with which he's throwing the football. There's a couple different phases when you're learning new mechanics and new technique. I always liken it to when you learn a new golf swing, right? At first, it's bad. It always gets worse before it gets better, right? It doesn't feel right. It's uncomfortable. So it's going to look that way. The results are going to be that way. And then you start, then you get in, if you stick with it, you get into a phase where you start to see the results. You start to hit the ball a little straighter, truer, you get a better drop on it. But it still feels weird. It's not muscle memory yet. And then you get to a point where you don't have to think about it as much. And I think we've seen those phases, right? Go all the way back to Mobile when I was there for Senior Bowl practices, and I didn't like anything he did. I thought he had a terrible week. By the time he got to the Combine, about a month later, he looked better. Still wasn't perfect, but he looked better. And then we heard reports out of OTAs that there were good days and bad days. And then the mandatory mini camp were both good days for him. It was widely reported that he had his best 2 throwing days. And then we get to camp and you see him build on that. There's some ups and downs. Last Friday was a rougher day for him where it looked like that muscle memory kind of lost it, right? That kind of happens along the way sometimes, and some of the old habits come back. Saw some flat-footed throws thrown at guys' feet. Then he came back, and I thought he did some really cool things Saturday in the football fest. Had another solid day today. Can't wait to see what he does on Thursday. Now, I don't think we're going to see Sam Darnold on Thursday, but we may see him the next week on Friday, 8 days later, because Macdonald was asked today about that game because Andy Reid is known for bucking the current trend in the NFL and playing his starters a little bit more than most in the preseason games. And Macdonald kind of hinted that maybe some of the starters will go a little bit longer or at least a little bit in that game. And then we've heard him say on the record that he really is looking forward to the joint practice with the Packers week 3 before their preseason game, because that's where he's really going to drill the starters hard, get some really good work in there, and then they aren't going to play at all in that third preseason game. But I know I sound like a broken record, but it was yet another good day for Sam Darnold. And every single day I see him at practice, I think he gets better. We heard the reports in OTAs that early on wasn't great. Was holding the ball too long. Didn't quite look like he had the offense dialed in, threw some interceptions. Every single day I've seen him since the first day of camp now, almost 2 weeks in, he gets sharper and sharper. The ball control is really impressive. I'm sorry, the ball placement. When you take today into account, what I saw for the most part on Saturday, what I saw earlier in the week last week, with the exception maybe Friday was kind of his roughest day, but by rough I mean there were a couple of throws that weren't great, but Friday was a day where the defense just kind of kicked the offense's ass all day long. His ball placement has been elite, and he throws the out route about as well as I've ever seen a quarterback throw it. I think he throws it better than Geno. His timing's better. Throws it earlier. He's a West Coast system quarterback. This offense fits him like a glove. And now that internal clock, every day it gets quicker. I haven't seen him with a single rep that I would consider holding the ball too long, even in a practice rep, for over a week. He's been really, really good. Let's see what you guys got. John McGrath, if Haynes was nursing an injury, does that mean he's actually not in Mike Macdonald's doghouse? Does that mean that Bradford hasn't been given the job and Haynes is still in the mix? It could. We were only left to speculate Friday when we didn't see Haynes. It wasn't just that he wasn't practicing. Friday was weird, right? I was there with Bryce, and we saw him doing all the individual work, the positional work, 100%. They weren't holding him back. And then as soon as the team stuff started, he wasn't out there. And then at one point in the 11-on-11, it looked like he started running out onto the field, and then a coach grabbed him and pulled him back. And then we get there Saturday, and we noticed the same thing. He did a little bit of drill work, but he didn't play at all. And Bryce also noticed he was only wearing one glove on his left hand. That indicated that they were only interested in giving him center reps. And so not getting any input from anybody else, only being left to speculate, trying to connect the dots, it just seemed weird. It felt like they don't want him to play guard anymore. Well, then about halfway through on Saturday's workout at Lumen Field, Haynes was standing on the sideline, and Bryce noticed that he had a brace on, or one of those slings that attaches to your shoulder pad and keeps you from being able to lift your arm too high. And then we got confirmation after practice on Saturday that Haynes was dealing with a sore pec. And so it doesn't sound like a doghouse thing. If it is, they're not letting on. And, Macdonald today made it sound like he's back in there. They're just kind of easing him back in. But now he's only playing left guard as of today. We'll see what happens in the game on Thursday. But maybe in those 3 days, with what the coaches have seen on film, he has kind of missed out on that spot. He certainly has time to insert himself back into that competition. But at, worst case scenario is it appears that the coaching staff is really trying to cross-train him on all 3 spots. Like maybe at worst he could be our new Evan Brown and a guy that can sub at any given spot. So I don't know. We'll still have to see. I know everybody wants to make quick decisions. Everybody wants to proclaim him as a bust. If he's not starting right away, they want answers. I do too. But just because we are where we are right now with Christian Haynes doesn't mean he can't ultimately be the starter. In the meantime, Anthony Bradford looks like the best version of Anthony Bradford that I've seen. Mike Macdonald really praised his work ethic, his attitude, his approach today. He said he understands this is it for him. Like he's in control of where his career goes from here, and he feels like a guy that's taken that control. And I think, we've seen what he can do in the running game. I remember last preseason, this time, being very hopeful, especially in that Charger game. Man, there were some reps where he literally would take guys out with one arm. There was one rep where he took 2 guys out at once. He could be so powerful, and he moves really well for a guy that size. I do think he's made some improvements. I think he's quicker out of his stance. That's always been a concern of mine with him. I think his technique generally is better, although you'll still see the odd rep where he leans or lunges and just whiffs on a guy. But if you saw our show on Saturday with Brandon, Kane of the Hawks Nest, Mookie Alexander, Corbin Smith, Bryce Coots, we talked about this issue that there aren't any offensive lines in the league with 5 All-Pros or even 5 Pro Bowlers. They usually don't work that way. Even the elite offensive lines, the great offensive lines, right? The Eagles of the last couple of years, the Lions before that, the Vikings probably up until last year. The Cleveland Browns went through a run a couple of years ago where they were one of the elite offensive lines in the league. You're always going to have that one kind of weak link, right? And those Cleveland Brown, those Cleveland Brown offensive line groups a couple of years ago were killing it with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, right? Ethan Posick wasn't an all-pro. Like, he made himself into a viable center, but he's, I don't know, use a baseball term, he's a replacement level player. But because the guards were so good with Bitonio and Teller, and the tackles were so good, you can form a cohesive unit. Well, we feel good about Abe Lucas now being back healthy. He talked at the podium today, talked about how good he feels. Macdonald talked about what a difference Lucas makes with the mentality of that line and the talent. And then you have Oluwatimi at center, who I think is having a really good camp and has a chance to be a really solid center. You put Bradford back there. If he just improves slightly and can get the most out of that skill set, it can work. A lot of you wanted to sign Mekhi Becton after he got moved to guard in Philly last year. He wasn't that good. I still, even in the playoffs, saw some just ugly pass pro reps out of him. I think Becton's very Anthony Bradford-like. Not a guy, I'm glad they decided to pay $10 million a year to him, not us. And so, let's try not to overreact to one guy that you don't like in the offensive line. And let's just see how it works. Because if there's one other recurring theme all throughout this camp, it's the work that they're doing, the coaching, the teaching on the offensive line, how much better this scheme looks, how much better this system looks. Like, there's an intention to everything they do. And you can just tell that there's alignment, right? There's continuity here with the coaching staff and everything else. And it's a thing of beauty. There was one rep today where they ran a wide stretch zone play, and the whole, the offensive line got out and technically it's not pulling, but you know what it looks like, where they all just kind of flow to the right. They get everything going that way. The back takes the hand off. He's working behind him, and then, got sealed off really nicely by Josh Jones, who was playing left tackle in place of Charles Cross, and Zach Charbonnet was able to cut it back and had the whole field wide open because that zone play was just executed so perfectly. So try to stay positive about the offensive line, because I'm telling you, it looks so much better than I've seen it in a while, and they're committed to it. There was one, when they started 11 on 11 today, I was standing next to Corbin, and we watched. It was probably about a 12-play session. There was one pass play out of those 12 plays, and we're chatting, but we're also keeping our eye on practice. And he turns to me at the end of it. He goes, "Well, that was a boring period." But it was because they're drilling the running game, you guys, and it's looking good. Also, by the way, Kenneth Walker was back out there today and looking just as explosive and dynamic as he was week one and early last week. And the jokes kind of write themselves. I know people have already reached out to me and said, "Hey, the second Kyron Williams signed a running back deal. Funny to see Kenneth Walker out there again, right?" Yeah, and this could be it too, John, that they just want one last look at Bradford while Haynes is banged up. Now, if Haynes is ready to go on Thursday, though, and he did, again, he practiced in full today. If he does the same tomorrow, then I would expect to see him on Thursday. And I would expect to see a ton of him. As a guy that needs some development and that needs a look and has some time to make up for because of the days he missed, I think we might see Christian Haynes for most of the game on Thursday. And I think that would make a ton of sense. Get him all the experience that you can. Let's see. I'd be flying an X-Wing. Good to meet you on, was that Friday or Saturday? I think it was Friday. Good to meet you and your wife. Great picture there. Thanks for coming out to Fast Fashion Brewery. So yeah, I don't think I've been told not to break any news. But that group, we had such a great time working together, and hanging out together. We all went out to dinner on Saturday night at Aqua on Pier 70 and had a wonderful time. Just a lot of easy chemistry with that group, but also a cool mix of backgrounds and experiences that we're talking about doing a regular monthly show the last Wednesday of every month. These are tentative plans, but I'll go ahead and tell you. The last Wednesday, did I say Monday? The last Wednesday of every month, we're all going to get together and do a crossover show. And we've already come up with a name for it and a thumbnail, a logo. Not going to divulge that yet. Really digging it. So keep an eye out for that. Osiris says, "Congratulations on being invited back." And John asked, "Did I get credentials yet? Is that why you're still in Seattle?" Here's the update on that. Just when I was starting to get a little pessimistic, and actually may or may not have texted the fiance with earlier yesterday with some plans on when I might go back to the East Coast and join her again if I don't get any more access. I got an email late yesterday from the comms team that said, "You're welcome to keep coming back to practice." And then today, that's all it was. It was a one-liner, right? Nothing beyond that. No promises, no schedules, no goalposts were presented. But today I got a chance to chat with Dave Pearson, who runs the media team there, the comms team for the Seahawks, has worked for them for a long time. He's the guy you always hear whenever there's a press conference involving the coach or a prominent player. When it's time to wrap it up, you hear that voice from the back go, "Anybody else?" That's Dave. So I introduced myself to him and got some really positive feedback. And, they have a process. And part of it is kind of seeing what I do, how I present myself, how I handle the access that I did have the first week and the shows that I present. It's not that they necessarily want an echo chamber, but they just want to be sure that that I'm approaching it professionally, and that I'm taking it seriously. And that they obviously they have the freedom to say yes or no to whoever they want to. And I've talked to some other people in the media, and they don't want to mute you or muzzle you or control your narrative at all. They want you to be honest and critical when you feel like it's warranted. They just want to get a feel for how you're going to approach the job and the content. And so, big thumbs up there. No promises beyond camp, but just keep doing what I'm doing one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, and we'll see how it works out. Also, shout out to Corbin Smith because he was asked for a reference and put in a good word for me to the folks there with the Seahawks. So that was really cool. Maybe I already covered this. Dogzilla, he's relatively cheap. It's $4 million if he spends the whole season on the roster, but it's the guarantees they gave him and it's the dead money. So they could cut him, but they would incur some dead money. And so, which is why, as I said, even if they do release him, I don't think that shuts the door on bringing him back, which would then lessen the blow of the dead money because he would be available to you. Let's see. Osiris says he doesn't make it through waivers. I don't know why you would think that because he's been out there on the market, available several times, many times over the last few years, and isn't always claimed on the initial waiver. In fact, I think 2 years ago he was on 3 teams in 1 year. Let's see. All right, let me work backwards. This is another interesting one. So I think we're going to get clarity. I think by the time they play Kansas City, I think that starting 5 will be the starting 5, unless someone gets hurt. I think that's kind of the timeline. I think if Olu's healthy, he's the center. The only open question is right guard. And it's going to be Bradford, Sundell, or Haynes. LeMaya has a non-zero chance, but I think he's kind of at the back of the pack there. But I think, I'll say it again, I'll relate what I was told a couple of weeks ago, that it's almost as if the Seahawks are trying to find a place to start Jalen Sundell. He had a rep today that was textbook wide zone, where he pulled, and who was it coming up off the edge? I want to say maybe it was Ty Okada. It was one of the safeties, but he came off the edge in the open field, one-on-one, locked up the safety on a block, and the back behind him, I think it was Jarcadia Wright, would have had just open daylight if they were running full speed and if it was full contact. There's questions about Sundell's strength at the point of attack. How stout can he be? How can he hold up against some of the elite interior rushers? But man, the athleticism is there. The technique looks good. I think you're going to see a lot of Christian Haynes and Jalen Sundell on Thursday because they really want to watch those guys and check it out. Rockman says, maybe you should shave, Dan. That might look a little more professional. Have you been to practice? Have you seen the way that the media guys dress and present themselves? Like, I kid, but I was worried about that, right? Like, I knew I'm not going to wear a logoed hat. I'm not going to wear Seahawks gear. I've tried to look a little, less. I mean, I've worn jeans every day. I try to wear a collared shirt, but all the other dudes show up in basketball shorts and high tops and baggy shirts for the most part. So don't have to worry about that. And no, I'm not shaving. No, I don't like my face. Yeah, Charlie, Torrey Horton has looked more than good. He has been phenomenal. He makes plays every day, and he looks like a complete receiver. He really does. Like, the routes are good, the hands are great. He makes the routine catch, but he makes the spectacular catch. We saw one of them in the Football Fest 11-on-11 on Saturday. We saw the one last Friday that was captured by the Seahawks media team where he mossed Josh Jobe, basically pulled the ball off of his back, essentially. It was, he's been terrific. And now he's mixing in with the ones and running full time with the twos. He's worked his way up the depth chart. You can see it day by day as he's gone through camp. Yeah. Mookie reiterates. Horton looks like a smooth route runner with great hands. I do want to see him when he hits full speed and also how he looks in full contact, handling contested catches. I am always nervous when a prominent skill position player is sent back to return punts. I get it. Some of the elite receivers that we've seen have done it. Tyler Lockett did it early in his career. Especially Horton, a guy that's, he's taller, he's thin, his legs are really skinny. There's a lot of real estate there to aim for the Gunners coming down to try to get him. I do worry about that. But then you watch the tape. I think he returned 4 punts for touchdowns at Colorado State. It's pretty spectacular. How can he hold up to the physical part of the game is certainly a thing. You wish he was built like Derek Young. Young had a catch today where he went sky high. He showed off every bit of his vertical jump to go up and high point the ball in the way he's built and everything. You don't worry about him taking contact. It's a little bit different when you look at a guy like that. Tight ends just look solid, smooth. It's a really good group. It really is. It's 4 deep because Brady Russell looks good out there. And Brady Russell, my first 53 man that I did before training camp started, I didn't have Brady Russell on it, but he's on this team. I think he's a glue guy. I think they love his spirit and the way he just, adds to the personality of the team. But it's the versatility too. He can be your backup fullback. He can play tight end. He's a great special teams guy. I think there's a really good chance he gets named special teams captain once he makes this team. But even Eric Saubert, who he hasn't made any highlight reel plays. It's one of those guys you don't really notice. In the team portion, you kind of have to watch the drills and everything else. But he just looks the part. And he's been doing it for a long time, and he's done it. He has the experience with Clint Kubiak and in this system. I like the tight end group a lot. And Elijah Arroyo is going to have game-breaking moments. And A.J. Barner, I think, is just developing into an outstanding two-way tight end and a guy that I think with each passing year is going to gain more respect around the league. He just looks better and better. We talked about it on the crossover show Saturday about how the comp for him in some ways might be John Carlson, right? Just a really solid pass catcher, athletic enough, really good blocker, maybe not elite, but good enough. And Carlson had injury issues. Otherwise, I think he would have had a much nicer career, but it's a really solid group. It's one of the groups that you just don't worry about anymore. It's like running back. It's like safety. You just don't worry about it. It's in really good hands. They signed a kid this morning. I can't remember his name. It sounds like Stoll is day-to-day. But it sounds like he'll be back once he's healthy. I don't think it's a real serious thing with him. This is a question that I don't really think has an answer. I don't think it really requires an answer. The difference between a number 2 and a number 3 receiver, I just don't really see the value in identifying that. Cooper Kupp is going to have a huge role on this team. He is the unquestioned starter alongside JSN. He's been healthy, hasn't missed a single rep, looks quick, looks agile. His cutting ability is just as good as I've ever seen it. I think you're going to see the best version of Cooper Kupp this year. And then I think you're going to see Torrey Horton get some opportunities to provide some explosives in the passing play. John asks again, how are they making up for the lack of depth at linebacker in practice? What schemes are they running the most? How are they using a lot of big nickel to have the safeties help out? I wouldn't say it's lack of depth. They have the bodies out there. And I think Drake Thomas is better than people think he is. And honestly, one of my standouts in practice today, I'm glad you asked the question, was Patrick O'Connell. Like, I think he seems bigger than when he first came into the league, and he covers really well. Really well. And we've seen him in preseason before. He'll get 10 tackles on Thursday. I like Patrick O'Connell. And I think if he's the fourth guy, you got to feel pretty good about that. Like, he looks the part. He really does. A little disappointed in what I've seen out of Derek Jackson. Corbin and I were talking about it quite a bit today. Corbin was the first to point it out, and so I watched him quite a bit today. He just doesn't have the explosive lateral movement that you need to play linebacker in this league. Got eaten up in pass protection on several one-on-ones, but even chasing down running plays, he just seems to be a step slow. I'm not even sure he's a guy that makes the practice squad at this point. Meanwhile, Josh Ross had surgery on his hand. He's expected back soon. He's a guy that could very well make the roster as a fourth inside linebacker too, like he did last year, because he's such a great special teams player and he has experience with Mike Macdonald. Yeah, here's Rockman saying Ross is a good linebacker. I think he's a guy that people forget about. Carmen says he's really excited for Cup. I think he should be. HB says they have Ivy at linebacker on the unofficial depth chart. Yeah. There's some other oddities in how they list certain positions on the roster, but Mike Macdonald told us himself he considers Ivy to be a big edge. So yeah, he's an outside, kind of like that Draymond Jones in the role they sort of transitioned him into last year, where he will play quote unquote outside linebacker in this scheme. On some reps, he will drop at times, but he's mostly a lineman and that big end. Who's the other guy? Roy Robertson Harris kind of played that role last year as well. I think that's how they envision Ivy. More of what you see, or what you saw out of Mike Morris, what they tried to do with Mike Morris last year. Although now I will say this, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show, but Macdonald did tell us a couple of days ago that now that they don't really see him as an outside linebacker type like they did early in his career or even last year, that it's more the interior stuff, being able to play on all fours and also play big end, that they like about him. I think Hankins will be back. Charlie Unicorn asks, will Jonathan Hankins be back by week 1? I think he will, unless or until we hear a change in tone from Mike Macdonald, because from day one, the first day of camp, he said that we're just taking care of him. You know, he's an older player. He's been in the league for 13 years, a little back thing. We're just making sure we do it right. I'm guessing, this is pure speculation, that when they negotiated to bring Hankins back, he may have said, hey, I don't want to be there every day. I don't want to be at camp every day. You know, he was around the team during some of OTAs. He came in for the mandatory stuff. I think he'll be here for week 1 against the 49ers. I do. Yeah. See you guys talking a little bit about Micah Parsons. I will say this, John. I was kind of out on Sheriff because I just hadn't seen him do anything of note in the practices. But Saturday, he kind of flashed a little bit when they'd bring him up off the edge. And even though they transitioned him to off-ball linebacker, it looks like they have a hybrid role in mind for him. And so there is an opportunity that he could be a guy that helps out in that edge group, especially if they don't add anybody else, and I still think they will. But another guy to continue to keep an eye on, I think he might have a chance to flash in games. And a guy that Mike Macdonald brought up unprompted today is Tyreek Smith, the 5th-round draft pick 3 years ago out of Ohio State. Today, Macdonald referred to him as a great rusher. He was asked about just the rest of that group, right? After Mafe, Hall, and Lawrence, What does the rest of the group look like, or what do they have to do to make the team, get in that rotation, impress you? And he said something like lean into what they do best, and accentuate that, right? Focus on the thing that you do best to give us a reason to put you on the roster. And that's when he said, like, for example, Tyreek Smith is a great rusher, so I want to see him get after the quarterback. He's a guy that I still hold out some hope for. I like him better than Sheriff just based on what I've seen so far, and I think he's a little bit bigger. But we'll see. We'll see. No news on Ricky White, SL Hazard. He's out there. He's been healthy. He's contributing. He's making plays occasionally. He just hasn't looked like a difference maker. He hasn't really done anything to stand out. Now, his opportunity to do that is going to come in the preseason games because he is such an outstanding special teams player. 4 blocked kicks last year. He can return kicks. Don't know if he's in the plans for that. He's still a guy that I like, and I would like them to find a way to keep him in the organization because I think he can really develop. And as you know, if you start looking ahead a year or two, no MVS, no Cup on this roster, like I like the upside that White gives you. Is he a guy that can get through waivers to the practice squad? I don't know. He was a 7th round pick. Sometimes that does tell you something about a player, but once he puts some reps on tape, you never know what's going on around the rest of the league. So not quite sure. Riley Mills, yeah, he's still injured, not doing anything on the field. He's out there in his jersey every day. He's got a sleeve on his leg. It does seem like the timeline that Schneider laid out after they drafted him, where they said basically about half the way through the season is kind of when they envision getting him back. There was a moment there where Mills made it sound like he was more optimistic than that. His agent made it sound like he might be ready for the start of the season. He's not going to be ready for the start of the season. But I also think they feel so good about the player that Mills could be. Heard Brady Henderson talking about this on a podcast yesterday, that they want to make sure they don't rush him back. And that when he's back, he's 100% healthy and he's ready to go. Even, I guess, in a worst case scenario where it ends up sort of being like a Darrell Taylor situation where he doesn't get activated all season long, you essentially call that a redshirt year. His contract tolls, right? It's like it moves forward and he still has 4 more years. It's basically like a redshirt year. I do think we'll see him play this year, but it's not going to be until later because they're being really careful with that. But yeah, a lot of love for Mills in the comments, and I agree. He was one of my favorite players in the draft that I just really didn't think. I didn't mock him a lot to us because I just didn't think he was going to be available when he was. Kick Up asks, how's Mafe been? He's been so quiet. You answered your own question, my friend. He's been quiet. He just doesn't flash. I think Lawrence and Hall are going to be your starters. I think Mafe is going to be a rotational edge that's mostly going to play on passing downs, and we'll see. I think there is 0 chance he gets extended before the season starts, even though he's eligible for that. Yeah, Ernest Jones is back. Looks healthy. They're not holding him back at all. The knee is fine. He says it's the best he's felt in 2 years. Shout out to Ernest Jones. Rest in peace to his dad. Can't imagine what that's like. I have a dad who's in his mid-90s, lots of health problems. It's nice to be back in the area, be able to spend some time with him. You just never know, right? Tomorrow's never promised. You just never know. But he's back out there and healthy. Yep. Yeah. All right, guys. So tomorrow, it's not a public practice. I'm not 100% sure what time practice goes tomorrow. It could be a morning practice, but if it's another 1 o'clock, then look for the same approach as I had today, where I'll do a quick takeaways video from the field as soon as everything wraps up, and I'll upload that from the facility so you can get that first. I'll write my camp notes on Substack and get that up first, and then come home and do another show and give you guys. We'll kind of look a little bit closer at the Raiders tomorrow. some of their depth chart, who we can expect to play, who might be fun to watch, some of the things that they're saying from that side. As we get into it, I had reached out to a Raiders content creator, a guy who's credentialed and actually covers the team that I've had on the show before. Haven't been able to get in touch with him. Maybe he'll come through tomorrow and we'll be able to get him on here. But if not, we will see you back here again. A couple last questions to get in. I think Martinez looks great. And the thing that really, first of all, once we get into games, he's going to shine, right? Because he's such a physical runner. Breaks the tackles. 60% of his yards last year came after contact. I think it was more like 65%, closer to 70. But what has really warmed my heart as someone who's liked Damian Martinez for a very long time is, even though he has very limited experience in the passing game in college, he has looked really good in pass protection drills, and he's caught the ball really well, including some difficult catches. So I'm really, really bullish on Damian Martinez. Okay, Mookie jumping in. So it looks like it is a morning practice tomorrow. I wondered if it would be a walkthrough. Talked to some of the other guys today, and they said they thought the same thing. So earlier start tomorrow. I'm sorry, hang on, time out. I will not be able to go live tomorrow night. I have an obligation. But because it's a morning practice, I should be able to get home and do a show with my full thoughts before I have to do that. So let's look for that tomorrow, shall we? Until then, subscribe, thumbs up, bell, at Seahawks Forever on Twitter and Blue Sky. Check the links down below for all the other ways you can support the show and all the other platforms that I use. For those of you on the Patreon, I'm still playing catch up. You've probably seen that over the last couple of days, especially some of the longer shows that I had to convert to audio because I didn't have a clear audio feed that originated from the show, and then moving forward, just getting all that stuff up there, including some extra stuff as I get some of that stuff from practice. In fact, as soon as I'm done here, I'll upload some practice video over there for you to check out. So until tomorrow, forever and always go Hawks. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. We'll see you then.